Welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tullahoma. Thank you for joining us this morning from YouTube, from Zoom, and here in person. We bid you welcome who come with weary spirits seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome who enter this hall as a homecoming, who have found here in this room for your spirit, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Now it is time for the chalice lighting. Carrie, if you would do that honor. Thank you. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundations of freedom, reason, and welcome, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that envisions a world flourishing with equality for all people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all this within each of us. Now is the time for announcements. I'll start. First of all, there's a board meeting after the talk back today, after the service. If you would like to donate to the work of our church, you can make a check payable to the UU Church of Tullahoma, mail it to our post office box 331, Tullahoma, Tennessee 37388, or put it in the shaker box at the back of the sanctuary. This would be a good time for those people who have made pledges to put a little deposit as well in there. We're running low on funds for, well, we have surplus funds, but from budgeted funds, we're kind of running low on our everyday expense funds. It'd be nice to replenish that little budget. We will be having a potluck next week, and then again on October 30th. I will put out a email in later this week to say what charity we're going to be collecting funds for, because we haven't decided that yet. Peace Live usually meets here in this building the second Tuesday of every month. If that is something that you are interested in attending, it's at 6 o'clock on the second Tuesday of every month. The Zen Meditation Group meets here on Wednesdays at the sanctuary starting at 6 p.m. If you are new to this group, come maybe 15 minutes or so early, and Doug Traverso will explain to you the procedures and how it's done, or you can email him. His email is on our website, tullahomauu.org, and you can contact him that way and ask him any questions about the Zen Meditation Group. Next week's speaker is Ricky Cruz. His topic is atheism. And finally, we will be having a retreat November 5th, which is the first Sunday in November. Contact Debbie Heddish if you can volunteer to help in any way. We have activities planned. Debbie sent out an email. She'd like to know how many people are coming, so it would be great if you could tell her if you're coming, if any kids are coming. And she put out a basic schedule of what is planned to occur. It will be from 10 to 4. We will have some sort of lunch, but we haven't really figured out what the food will be yet.
You said Sunday, I think, isn't it not Saturday?
Oh, did I say Sunday? Mm-hmm. Saturday, November 5th, the first Saturday in November. Thank you very much, Tom. I misspoke. I have Sunday on the brain. And what about the Thursday discussion group?
The Thursday discussion group is once a month, and it's going to be on writing, no matter what it is. If you're
A
a
writer's
writer of
group.
any sort, even on walls or whatever.
Okay.
Just come.
Railway cars.
Yeah.
Which Thursday would it be on? The same?
The second Thursday,
Okay. Second Thursday of every month
and I'm not.
is
Rick?
the writers group. Yes, Rick.
Yeah, regarding
The former
other,
Thursday
the
group.
other Thursday night group, which is still on hiatus, I've sent out a couple of emails searching for interest and not had very much response, quite frankly, other than 2 or 3. So we're really haven't firmed up any plans. The subject would be rethink about the disruptive nature of what we need to do to move forward. In several areas, it's a series of videos put out by a California think tank, which is fairly well done, I think. Some of us have seen it, but we're still kind of trying to figure that one out. We'll probably be looking at Wednesday night rather than Thursday night in order to facilitate some participation with the Zen folks. So stay tuned, and if you do have any interest, let me know. I would appreciate that. So
Contact Rick Phelps for any more information on the former Thursday night group, which now hopefully, if we have enough participation, will be on Wednesday nights.
Well, there was a Wednesday night group formerly.
Start out
and then
with.
there was
We're back to
Thursday
where we
night.
started.
It should be a Wednesday night group to begin with.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. And were there any announcements from the people on Zoom?
No.
Any other announcements here? Yes, Tony.
We desperately need someone to step up for the position of treasurer. Karen is trying to hold down both roles of president as well as her former role as treasurer, and that is way too many responsibilities. The board is stretched pretty thin with everything that we have to do. Can't beg enough for someone to help out and take this position.
Thank you, Tony. Jean?
This is kind of a joy and concern.
Okay.
The announcement is for those whom I talk with during the intermission and they wonder who beat me up.
Oh.
It turns out it was cancer and they got it all.
Oh, good.
I'm fine. Again,
Yay.
extra nostril, but that's.
Okay. But you're fine now, so this is good. Any other announcements? No. We will go on then to our speaker, who is Tom Bentley, whose topic is sailing lessons. And we're trying to incorporate.
No, we need that.
No, we need that. We're trying to incorporate pictures, and if those of you on Zoom are having trouble seeing them, speak up, please. So Katie knows that you can't see them.
Okay.
Whether or not we can do anything about it is a different story.
Good question. Yeah, we've changed the title of this thing several times, and sailing life lessons, I think, is coming. I'm going to just set this over here. Like that. Well, good morning. This is I get to talk about something that I enjoy very much, and been around me for quite a while, since a little kid, in fact. And so there's a lot of life lessons to be learned from sailing, and that's what I'm going to try to talk about. So here we go. All right, there's the first one. It's called, that boat there, by the way, belonged to a friend of mine. I think he sold it, but that was down in Florida. What? You okay? Okay. Anyway, on that boat there on the front, Bill Reiner, myself in the back, and Mac on the back. And this took place at my sister's marina, not her real marina, but I mean, it's where she lives, on Longboat Key. And we were headed towards Panama City to meet up with Frank Steinley and Bob Paul. And it was intended to be a nice 2-week trip or less to get us to Galveston. Wow. So that was turned out to be a 1.5 year trip full of adventure. So a trip turns into an adventure when things go wrong. So that's what it was. All right, next one. This is a little poem that is hanging in my house. It's great. It's a Shel Silverstein poem, so let me read that to you. Anchored. Our anchor is too big for our ship, so we're sitting here trying to think. If we leave it behind, we'll be lost. If we haul it on board, we will sink. If we sit and keep talking about it, it'll soon be too late for our trip. It sure can be tough on a sailor when the anchor's too big for your ship. All right, this boat here is the oldest operating sailboat in the world. It's at San Diego, and it's a great boat. It's made out of iron, one of the very first ships made out of iron, and so it's a bit of an experiment, if you wish. Sailing is steeped in tradition going back thousands of years. Probably the first time a guy put up a piece of cloth or something and moved out on this little boat or whatever it was. And it's full of time-tested rules and hard-won knowledge. The ship in the picture, as I said, is the Star of India, and she began her life in the Ramsey shipyard in the Isle of Man, and as I said, it was an experiment kind of in iron. We'll see how it goes. She was named, and I've got it's Euterpe, I think, which is the Greek muse of music and poetry, and that's not those things are connected a lot. I've been involved in the Not Yet Dead Poets for quite a few years, and probably half of them were sailors. So while very few sailing boats are warships any day nowadays, even though I did get to fire on the USS Constitution, I believe it is, in the harbor in Baltimore. And we did that with a bunch of scouts. So it was great fun. Made a big noise, a lot of fun, a lot of smoke. Yeah, there you go. All right, next one. Okay, we're going to define sailing in some way. Sailing is the fine art of getting wet and becoming ill while employing a method of moving slowly over water in which continental drift plays a major part. It's equivalent to standing in a cold shower, fully clothed, throwing up, tearing up $100 bills while a bunch of other people watch you. A sailboat has been compared to a hole in the water into which we throw money, but this is not true. In fact, it's probably one of the cheaper ways of getting out in the world and getting around. I have a boat that if it was being made today like it was when it was built back in 1985, it would probably go for about $100,000. And I got it for less than somebody's motorcycles or things like that. So, yeah. So anyway. Okay. Let's see. Yes. Doing this, learning to recover from a capsize, is part of the whole game, and it can be a lot of fun too. So I'll tell you another story about that sort of thing in a minute. Okay, next one. All right, these two pictures here cover a couple of things. One, sailing, I think, is a metaphor for life. Chock-a-block, full of sailing-derived knowledge, phrases, and terms. A chock-a-block is when you get too many lines in one block or pulley and it seizes up, or you can put a fid in there and lock it up if you wanted to. So that's where chock-a-block comes from.
A fid.
A fid. A fid is a way of, it's a sharp thing that you use for untying knots, or making knots, or weaving got lots of things you can do with it. This picture on the right, it was Max Smith, who owned the boat that we were going. It was called Freebooter, and he was going up the mast. We were down there cranking away, getting him to go up, and he had to replace the halyard, a halyard or a pulley, if you know the word for it. And facing your fears, that's one way to do it, because that's about 50 feet up in the air. So, and you're just wondering, because one block failed, with the other one that's pulling you up there, is it going to fail? So that sort of thing. I got a book from my daughter when we were up in the Northeast, and it's called First You Have to Row a Little Boat. And it was written by Richard Bodie in 1995. And that is probably one of the more famous little books for sailors that I know of. And Bodie says, it reflects on what learning to sail taught him about making choices, adapting to change, and becoming his own person. Great little book. If you want one, you can get them online, very simply, used for a few bucks. Alrighty. Oh, on the lower left-hand corner here, this is Tom Gillard, and you'll show it up a little bit later. This is a sailing class that I taught for probably 20 years on and off with a bunch of folks out at the yacht club. And I know yacht is a much overused term for our little yacht club. However, you can go all over the world, and you have reciprocity with places like the San Diego Yacht Club, okay, which is pretty well known for the America's Cup races and that sort of thing. Okay, so there is also a social aspect to sailing. I sailed with a fellow out at work, got out and started learning how to do things in the middle of the winter, and he got a particular kind of boat because it was kind of a social boat. It was one that a lot of people got into it because it was more of a social aspect to it. So the person on the left was Tom Gillard's uncle and aunt. That's Lee and Linda. The guy on the right over here is a seagull. So here's what happened. Every time I'd go out to San Diego, and I was out there about once every year, I would immediately get off the plane around 1 or so in the afternoon and head over to the San Diego Yacht Club. And they would say, "Are you a member of a yacht club?" And we'd say, "Yes." Well, I said, "Then go in to the front desk, sign in. You've got to pay everything with either a credit card or cash." And that was it. You had free reign pretty much. And then those days, the America's Cup was on display there, so kind of neat. It sat screwed down to a table in the New York Yacht Club for about 100 and some years. So back when that got lost to the Aussies, that syndicate, well, anyway, that was a sad day. But on the other hand, it really brought up the interest in sailing for all around the world. So, and that idea of moving about as fast as a continental drift, that's changed a lot, by the way. You've all seen the foiled boats that can go 50 miles an hour. Amazing, absolutely amazing. So here, Tom Gillard's uncle, he's a scout leader, by the way. That's what he was doing in that other picture. And his aunt Linda at the San Diego Yacht Club were there getting everything off of their sailboat because they were selling it, and this was the last day. Happened to be there at that time. The year before, I happened to be there that time when they put it on the market. So anyway, so as they got there, basically, well, it was kind of a social event, I guess, and it was one of the two best times in a sailor's life, when you buy a boat and when you sell the boat. Those are the two. Anyway, Lee said, "Don't feed Bentley," as they're going on board, thinking he was talking to his wife Linda, and it turns out there was an awkward silence after that. He says, "Don't feed Bentley," and I said, "Really?" And it turned out that Bentley was the name of the seagull, okay? And the reason he got the name Bentley is he had a bent wing. He was, so they fed him, which was not a good thing to do, because seagulls will sit on anything they can and make deposits on a used boat. So that's what happened with that one. So that's Bentley. Alrighty. Here's the neat thing about sailing is that sailing terminologies and sailing traditions are part of our lives all the time. Sailing is very much like flying an airplane. The rules are pretty much the same. I've been out in San Diego near the Salk Institute and saw 27 sailing devices, paragliders, big sailboats. I mean, big, not sailboats, big gliders that are towed off with a Jeep off the edge of a cliff, which is a couple hundred feet down on Black's Beach, which happens to be the nude beach, by the way. You can't see it from upstairs, so that's way up there. So anyway, here's some of the things we can learn. The 3 sheets to the wind, we all know what that means. It means you're drunk. That's the idea. If you're 3 sheets to the wind. Now, how did that come from? Well, you see the little boat over there on the left, and it's 3 sheets to the wind. Okay. Well, first of all, a sheet is not the sail; it's the line. Okay, and to sheet in just means you pull on the line, and it's a control device, I guess. And so, if these things are let loose and they're let loose to the wind, the ship will start to lose headway and certainly lose control. A good description of somebody that is drunk. If all 3 sheets are loose, well, that's the way it goes. Now these little things here are truly 3 sheets in the wind, and that's about it, but that's not the same meaning, okay? Alrighty, next one. This guy had just completed, or almost completed, his transatlantic crossing in that boat. It's 13 feet 6 inches. It's a used lifeboat, and he fixed up that little cuddy cabin on that, and 2.5 months later he made it from our side of the pond to the other side of the pond. Now, if you can imagine, this guy is 6 foot, I forgot the tall, I think he's 6'2" or something like that. And he never could fully extend his body while sleeping in that thing for 2 months. He had all his provisions in there, water maker, all that sort of stuff, emergency gear, all that. This was back in the 60s, and I found that absolutely fascinating, that somebody could do that. And his name was Bob Landry. He was an editor for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And this little boat was put together for his family to learn how to sail. And then he got this wild idea to sail that thing across the Atlantic, which he did. And there's a book called just simply Tinkerbell. So you might want to find that. if you can cram all that stuff into that small a boat and make it across alive, you're doing very well. So that was kind of my inspiration back in the 60s when he was doing that, making that trip. And I found that really my inspiration. So I started making small boats, okay, and made even a radio control boat from scratch, pretty much. Made it out of beer cans that I soldered together into a catamaran. It had a black sail on it with Professor Fate. You remember Professor Fate, the movie? There was, yes. Well, anyway, that was my first start, I guess, when making boats. Okay, so that's it. So let's look at a few nautical quotes, and there are a lot of them. Oh my gosh, you can go for days, I think, just exploring the quotes. The most famous one, the biggest cliche in the literature of boating, is what the water rat said to the mole. And this is Wind in the Willows, right? Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half as much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. I hear that routinely when I'm with my friends out sailing. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to get my boat out there much recently, but we're going to try to fix that up this fall. So, anyway, that's and that's really true. That's really true. Very much true. Okay, here's some of the things that we've learned. Sailors, with their built-in sense of order, service, and discipline, should really be running the world. The way that we've been having the world run nowadays, I think it's probably true, maybe even more so, and Nicholas Montserrat is the guy who said this. Sometimes society learns major life lessons as well, and so let us consider the Titanic. The cost of lessons learned was far more than the loss of 1,500 lives. Some are good lessons, some not so good lessons. And the need for preparation was one lesson learned. A lifeboat for everybody on board. And don't let one's ego get in the way of common sense. The chap up there at the top right is Captain Edward John Smith. He went down with this ship, and his great-great-granddaughter came over here on an Rotary exchange program and talked to us about what happened, and talked about her great-grandfather. So this is these two ships here are not the same one, and they're not the same one in two different ways. First of all, the one on the left was named in the christening ceremony or whatever, the Titanic. The one on the right was named the Olympic, and it survived. It actually was the other way around. It was going to be the other way around. They didn't get the one that was the Olympic never did get built in time, and so they swapped the name. So the Titanic was supposed to be the Olympic, and vice versa. So that's a bit of trivia. And one other lesson learned is that there's no such thing as an unsinkable ship. And that's hubris, I think, to think that we can do that. And as we know now, it isn't working. Alrighty, this couple here probably did more for sailing than about anybody else. Josh Slocum probably was the initial one. He got an old boat out of a field somewhere, fixed it up, sailed around the world without an engine. And these guys did the same thing. They sailed approximately 200,000 miles in the oceans, which is, you figure divide that by 25,000, it's like going around the world 8 times, I guess. That's a lot. Okay. So anyway, the gal on the left there, it's his wife. That's Lynn, and she was born in 1944. It's Larry Pardee, And he's a writer. In fact, both of them are, I guess, were writers. And that's one of their books there shown on that one. It's called Self-Sufficient. And it says a lot about life. So his quote here is, "There's no better tool or equipment you can have on board than a well-trained crew." And that really is the case. Let me see. He coined the phrase, "Go small, go simple, but go now," and have been called the enablers as their example encouraged many people to spend a lot of their life out on the sea or out in the ocean or just sailing around in your local lake. And he did a lot of good for the cause, if you wish. Unfortunately, Larry passed away about a little over 2 years ago, I think, right now. Alrighty. Okay, so here's another quote. This quote is Theory versus Practice, and Leonardo. And it had nothing to do with the innuendo. Okay. It was Theory versus Practice. "He who loves practice without theory is like the sailor who boards ship without a rudder and a compass, so he never knows where he may cast." And this is the thing on the right, on the left there, excuse me, is not a sailboat. It's not a paddle wheel boat. It's a dredge for dredging out channels, that sort of thing. And that approach to life I've used a lot, and he would take an idea and expand upon it, knowing that it can be done. And a lot of the things, even the helicopter, which you've probably seen pictures of, had a chance to take a bunch of Boy Scouts to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and they had an exhibit of Leonardo da Vinci's inventions there. Phenomenal thing. And so boats, weapons of war, all sorts of things that he did. So there you go. Alrighty, this next guy is me and my sister, Babs. I was probably 7 or so right there, and a little behind the little outboard motor I still got. It's still around. I don't know if it'd ever run again, but anyway, there it is. And this is up in Wisconsin. We'd go up there every August to get away from hay fever that my dad would always seem to have about that time. So anyway, so this is a couple of things here. Learning through discovery is one of them. For me, that was my way of discovering life on the water, and it was just phenomenal. That boat I was just impressed with. It's a beautiful little wooden boat. It was built, that picture of that boat was built the winter before when people were indoors, and it was just a lovely boat, well varnished, everything, just a nice little boat for sure. It's a rowboat. And has an outboard boat. Sailing teaches life skills through self-discovery, and this was definitely the case here. It's a very effective and interesting way to learn, and it's different from most educational methods used in school. By learning through self-discovery, people develop a thirst for greater learning as well as a deeper understanding of their subject matter. One thing I did learn in that boat is that my sister can outcatch me with the bluegill. I remember one time she threw the hook out, nothing on it, brought back a nice little bass like that. I never did very well, and still don't do any. Fishing's not my thing, and I don't do well at it. Self-discovery also enhances self-confidence, and that's very important, to have self-confidence. There's simply nothing like being able to pilot your own craft at age 7 or so. Riding a bicycle is one thing. Skillful steering and docking a boat is quite another. So, yeah, there we go. So a few more notable quotes, if you wish. This guy here, you all know who he is. Mark Twain, of course, he was a pilot on the Mississippi River at one time. And his quote is this: 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by things you didn't do than those things that you did. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from safe harbor, catch the wind in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Sailing teaches people and gets people comfortable with making real-time decisions. And when faced with the changing course of their boats, wind shifts, and tidal currents and that sort of thing, those are the things you have to make instantaneous decisions, and you need to learn about those, how you do that. This is one reason why the U.S. Navy, the Annapolis, they have a lot of boats out there. Some of them are fairly small. A couple of people maybe can get in them, but some of the training boats now are, I think, 30, 40 footers, which is not a big boat, by the way. So there you go. So that's what the Naval Junior ROTC teaches in high school. We do not have a Naval ROTC group here, but we do have a Marine group. But anyway, the cadets and the midshipmen at the Naval Academy use small boats to learn communication skills, all sorts of different things, learning about navigational rules, that sort of thing. So, yes, what else we got? Okay. I missed one of these, I'm not sure I got it. I think I passed over one of them. I'm trying to think what the name of the port and starboard. Everybody know how port and starboard came to be? I don't know. Some people did. Okay, if you were the English had they're a seafaring bunch. They're an island, so you had to get anywhere. You had to get on a boat somewhere. No airplanes, but there you go. So what they did, most of the boats stayed on the south side of the Thames. Okay, so if you're on the south side, the Thames is going from left to right, from west to east, and that's where all the warehouses were, and so most of the boats were docked on that side, facing that way. So port side would be on the left, and then the starboard side is where you could look out over the rail and look up and see the northern star, hence starboard. So starboard and port. And you can remember the difference. Port is red as a wine, and starboard is, well, it's the other side. Okay, there's several other quotes here that I think are of importance. Being adventurous comes in all shapes and forms and sizes. It can be dramatic, poetic, heart-pounding, or profound. It can be all of the above, sometimes totally and completely unexpected. As I said, a trip can turn into an adventure in an instant. Sailing creates a sense of adventure which combines curiosity and boldness and becomes make one comfortable to face new challenges. It does so while being fun, creating the desire to enjoy new challenges. And that's, if there's one thing that I've learned in life, is that you need to take a little risk, get out there, and have the confidence that you can actually figure it all out at some point, and that's the way it is for me, was for a lot of things. Hiking, biking, hiking the AT, caving, vertical caving, so forth. And I figured I learned a lot from that. So you take these risks and you jump at it. That first boat that you saw, first sailboat, I heard Frank Steinley say to his cousin, he had just bought a boat and needs to get it to Galveston. And I immediately went over there and said, if you need me to crew, I will crew for you. So that's what I did. And it was just like that. It was a snap decision. It was taking risk, and boy, was it ever taking risk, it turns out. As I said, this 2-week trip turned into a year and a half. And we came across in 35-mile-an-hour winds across the Gulf of Mexico with waves slapping into the back and filling the diesel engine full of seawater, which means we were in trouble. And it took about a year to get that thing all fixed up again. So risk-taking, Joseph Conrad's quote is, "There is nothing more enticing, disenchanting, and enslaving than the life at sea." And probably is a true one. I won't say much more about that. Responsibility, taking responsibility, we learn to be jointly responsible for one another. The easier the sailing will be if you do so. It's important. There's an old adage that says, one hand for you and one hand for the boat, okay? So you take care of yourself probably first, but you gotta take care of the boat as well. So you take on that responsibility when you get out into the oceans, and that's what you gotta do, just gotta do it. Taking command of even a small boat is a lot of responsibility. Not only are boats costly to purchase and repair, unless you're frugal like I am and find one that needs a little elbow grease to fix it up, but being in any situation involving water has a certain level of danger. Even the youngest sailor learns the needs to follow safety protocols, safe practices, using safety gear, and acting in a safe manner. Sailing is so much fun that the kids and myself and others will push the limits on how far you can tip a boat over without actually capsizing, which is fun to do. And we've scared a lot of people to death doing that for somebody that's new to the whole sport. So that's fun too. So, yeah. Alrighty, what do we got? We got a few more. We're getting close to the end. Courage. Confronting a storm is like fighting God. All the powers in the universe can be against you in an extraordinary way. Your irreverence is at the same time both humbling and exalting. And that's what we went through coming across the Gulf. In the middle of the night, 8 to 10 foot waves, not big, but big enough, and sicker than a dog all the way. To step away from the land into the marine environment powered only by the wind takes courage. To try and make a boat sail as fast as you can and take risks in order to be victorious during a race takes courage. Sailors are uncomfortable while sailing, especially in a racing situation, and have developed a deep-rooted level of courage. How close can you get to that boat before you cross from one tack to the other? Perseverance. There is nothing like having to steer by hand with a tired, seasick crew of 3 through the night in high seas. That was that crossing across the Gulf. My gosh, that was really something else. But anyway, perseverance is next. There is nothing like, as I said, nothing like having to steer by hand. Well, nauseous. Anyway, sailing rewards perseverance. There's a good reason why many boats haven't been named tenacity, resolute, and endurance. Shackelford's boat was named Endurance, and he didn't lose a single man over a year. And that was an interesting story. There's many a documentary on Shackleton's voyage to the Antarctica. Flexibility. Flexibility is a requirement for survival. That's Roger Van Ock. A sailor must not be rigid in following a plan because the sea, one's competitor, and weather are always changing. The sailor must learn a level of flexibility to be successful. And then cognitive skills. There's all sorts of cognitive skills, from navigation and it just goes on and on and on. Sailing is a learning experience, and there's no doubt about it. So anyway, there's all sorts of things. To communicate with crew, manage the shape and trim of a sail, to steer a boat, navigate the boat in the bay, considering other boats, shoals, etc. It's important to think through, have some of the theory behind you, and go. That'll get you where you want to go. So anyway, this is the end of this. The last one here, this picture. There are my two daughters, and I think that's the Bounty. I'm not sure. It looks like it, but I'm not sure. Well, it may not be. Okay. This was in Florida, obviously Florida, and this is basically the end, or well, it's the stern, I guess, is what it is, not the end. There you go. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. Let's see. What did I do with my book? Hold on. So now we're going to close out the service, break for about maybe 10 minutes, and then circle up and have a discussion about life sailing lessons. The prayer of our souls is a petition for persistence, not for the one good deed or single thought, but deed on deed and thought on thought, until day calling unto day shall make a life worth living. If you would stand as you're willing and able, we sing our closing hymn.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.